What is it about the Championship and managers getting sacked who really don't deserve to be? Des Buckingham has been sacked by Oxford United in a decision that I find absolutely baffling. So, it has been made official on Oxford's website that Des Buckingham has left the club. They've dressed it up as a way of sort of saying that he's left. I don't know if they're trying to make it sound mutual. I don't know if they're trying to maybe make it sound like, things have come to a sort of mutual agreement and both parties are happy with the decision. Maybe that is the case. I don't quite know, but a couple of reports I've seen suggest that he has been sacked. That's the word I've seen used from a number of journalists, but on the website at least it says they can confirm he's left his role as men's first team coach. Appointed in November 2023, he led the club to promotion, obviously via the playoffs at the end of last season. And they just then mentioned that they'd like to place on record their thanks to him. And that's it, really. A very short, straight kind of statement that doesn't really tell you all that much. But what I think I can say, and what I think a lot of people agree with, the majority of people within football, is that this is an absolutely baffling decision. Obviously, Des Buckingham took over in November of 2023, he took over from Liam Manning, who did an outstanding job, a very, very tough act to follow down there. And although I think they were second when he took over, they were in an incredibly tough League One playoff race, promotion race, and to still get them into the playoffs was an unbelievable achievement. In fact, there's a tweet that I'm going to put on screen by, and I don't know the guy who tweeted it, but it's a fantastic tweet. And I think this sort of sums up his time at Oxford, what he'd achieved, from someone who probably knows Oxford a little bit more than me. But he mentions how taking over from Liam Manning was difficult after such high standards previously. Obviously, he got them into a playoff four that were unbelievably difficult. They were by far the underdogs in the playoffs, with Peterborough, Barnsley and Bolton in there. Their performance in the playoff final was outstanding. I remember watching it. They absolutely outclassed Bolton, who many probably thought they were just going to, walk past Oxford and get themselves promoted into the Championship. And then, you look to this season, as he says, I don't think Oxford have been in the relegation zone yet. And I've rounded up all the Championship games this season, and I've always said Oxford have been incredibly competitive. He leaves them in 20th, and yet they're going through a tough spell right now. I think it's one win in 15 games. But for me, this is Oxford's hierarchy forgetting and almost dismissing and being very short-sighted, the success and where he's brought Oxford and the achievement to them being in the Championship full stop. But even then, so far this season, they were odds on for everybody, bookies, content creators, pundits, everyone had Oxford as the whipping boys almost, 24th. Yeah, even if they're not bottom, they're undoubtedly going to be in the bottom three. But he has proven that he can make this Oxford team very competitive. Their home form especially, for the majority of the season thus far, until very recently, has been very competitive. Again, that's the word I would use. And by far, I think they've got the toughest job of the three newly promoted teams to stay in the league this season. And as that guy said on that post on X, which I think is a great post, they've not been in the bottom three as yet. So why have they pressed the panic button? There are teams and managers in this league who I think have done a far worse job, given the relative expectations of the club they're managing, who are still there. You look at Wayne Rooney at Plymouth. He's still there. They're still hanging on to him, given their position. Portsmouth with John Messinio. They've had a slight upturn, but there was a point in the season where his place in the team looked absolutely dead and buried, where they were getting absolutely battered. They weren't being competitive. Even Luton Town, with Rob Edwards. I know there's a bit of talk there on, the compensation and the contract he has and stuff, but you can't tell me any of them are more deserving of being in their current respective role than what Des Buckingham was at Oxford United. And I think this could be a huge, huge reactionary mistake, because what I think Oxford need is just consistency and stability, in this league. Whether they end up going down or they stay up, they had to keep hold of Des Buckingham regardless, because what's the worst case scenario? Worst case scenario is they go down, they were kind of expected to be one of the teams who might go down anyway, but they keep the same manager who got them out of League One before. They keep that continuity. They keep the club settled. They keep everyone on the same page, and they can try and come back. But to sort of get rid of the manager who, from what I gathered, was incredibly popular with the players, incredibly popular with fans. Everyone loved him. I think he's a local lad. He's very passionate about the job. I think to get rid of him throws so much up in the air at Oxford, and they just don't need that in their predicament. They're already underdogs, you could say. They've already got an uphill task when it comes to the financial side of the Championship, the finances that they're up against with a lot of the teams in the league, the quality of squad that they're going up against when they are playing in the Championship every single week. They've got so many things that they're sort of fighting, up against as the underdog. The last thing they need is to unsettle the camp, having to get in a new manager, especially at this stage. Maybe if there was 10 games to go and they were 6 or 7 points adrift, you get a firefighter in. If you want to have a real desperate attempt to stay up when you really do press the panic button. But to do it in mid-December, with still 20 plus games left, with a manager who's proven that he can drag the absolute best out of this Oxford team, when they've not even been in the bottom three yet, I just find it so panicky. They've absolutely bottled. They've crapped themselves, if I'm honest, and I wouldn't be surprised to see them really come back and rue this decision that they've made. I mean, are they after a short-term manager bounce from someone else? Even then, I think they're still probably going to regress to where they are now anyway. I just feel like keeping him for the long term is by far the better option, even if they go down or even if they stay up. I just don't understand what they've done here. And to follow up and finish off the post that this guy, brilliantly written up, he mentions obviously that they've not been in the bottom three yet and that they're on a bad run. They've got great games coming up that are winnable. They've overachieved, you could say, as well at the moment, which is credit to the job Des Buckingham did. And he mentions the gap, that they're 20th. There's not a big gap that separates them to sort of mid-table, and our couple of wins could have quite easily dragged them away and things could have been rosy again. But even then, Oxford being 20th is not a bad thing. Where else would you expect them to be? I think another post I saw, which I thought was absolutely spot on, is that he's another manager who, unfortunately, and this is what sucks about modern football, and I guess the decision-making of some of, the other owners in football now, he was a victim of his own success. Because he had such an outstanding start to the season, because he's not been able to maintain that, things look worse. They're perceived to be worse than what they probably were. What if they'd been bottom all season up until this point, and like what Pompey have just done up until Friday night, granted. But what if Oxford had a shocking start to the season where they'd been in the bottom three all season long and they'd had an upturn like what Pompey have had or what QPR have had, and they've just dragged themselves out of the bottom three for the first time and they were in 20th and they were looking up? What if that was the case? If Oxford were 20th in December, having been in the bottom three all season, the perception would be flipped on its head and he'd be seen as someone who's doing a great job. He's got them moving in the right direction. The last thing they'd want to do is sack him. But because the results have started going wrong, now they sack him? I just don't understand it at all. I think they've looked at this from a very short-term, short-sighted point of view. And I just feel like there was already enough things going up against Oxford, just naturally with the club they are in this league. And now I think the owners have made their job just so unnecessarily much harder, because they need to get someone in now who's going to galvanise the team, who's going to get behind, get the fans on side, and the fans will support whoever comes in. But it feels so hard done by on Des Buckingham, and if things don't start well under the new manager, suddenly the new manager and the club's put under pressure that they didn't need to be put under, because they're not under pressure to stay up for me. They just need to keep competing. But if this new guy comes in, whoever he may be, and things don't start well, their form doesn't improve, in fact it even gets worse, and they drop into the bottom three, people are going to instantly turn to the ownership and say, well, you've put us in this position, you've made a change you didn't need to, this is on you. And that's when things, get messy. That's when there's instability. That's when things go south. That's what Oxford would never have had if they'd kept Buckingham, regardless of league position. So they've opened themselves up now to criticism. They've opened themselves up to things really going wrong. instability and just things going wrong. So I hope, for Oxford case, that's not what happens. I hope this new manager turns things around, and in the end we look at this decision and it's a justified one by the owners. But quite honestly, they've just opened up a can of worms they didn't need to open. They've put the club in an unstable position when it comes to the head coach and the players and where they go from here when they really didn't need to. I just don't understand this decision whatsoever. So if you're an Oxford fan, I'd most importantly like to hear from you in the comment section below with your thoughts. But I think everyone I've seen who is even an Oxford fan or just a sort of neutral just doesn't understand this decision. I think it's an absolutely terrible one, if I'm honest, and I feel really, really sorry for Des Buckingham because he's a very good upcoming young coach who I'm sure will be back in the Championship at some other point. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. Give a video a like if you want as well. I do lots of Championship content here on the channel, so feel free to support the video on the channel by also subscribing if you enjoyed the content. But until next time, guys, do take care, and I'll see you all in the next one.